Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our webinar today called Recess, Why It Should Rock. My name is Hannah Laughlin. I am the Director of Field Operations here at Action for Healthy Kids, and I am happy to be joined today by my friends Keith Kramer and Andrew Romberger from Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools in North Carolina, who we're going to hear from a little bit later about the work that they've done around recess. I also want to thank my coworker, Christina Shelton from Action for Healthy Kids, who is going to be answering questions on the back end today. So let's review some logistics before we get started today. Once you're logged in, you'll see a control panel. It usually starts off on the right side of your screen. And you can use your telephone or your speakers to listen to today's presentation, but everybody will be muted to avoid any background interference or static. There is a dialog box for questions at the bottom of your control panel. You can type questions into this dialog box as we go along, and we'll try to answer them throughout the webinar and then also at the end. If we're not able to get to the webinar questions, in the end, we will answer via email in a follow-up. This webinar is being recorded, and links to the recording and the handouts will be sent out to you tomorrow. So don't feel like you have to scribble everything that we're saying down, because you can come back to it. So let's get started. First, I'd like to give you a little background on Action for Healthy Kids. Action for Healthy Kids fights childhood obesity, undernourishment, and physical inactivity by helping schools become healthier places. Our vision is a world in which every kid is healthy, active, and ready to learn. We are moms, dads, teachers, students, school and community leaders, and school wellness experts who have banded together to create healthy learning environments for our children. We were founded in 2002 by former Surgeon General David Satcher, and today we have more than 130,000 members. We also partner with dozens of professional organizations, government agencies, corporations, and school districts at the national and local level. And we work to mobilize school professionals, families, and communities to take actions that lead to healthy eating, physical activity, and healthier schools where kids thrive. The learning connection is the driving force behind all of our work at Action for Healthy Kids. It helps you make the connection between physical activity, healthy eating, and learning. It's an easy-to-read special report that summarizes the most recent research proving that healthy kids are better learners. Research shows that physical activity has a positive impact on academic achievement, which is what schools care about most. It leads to more focused classroom behaviors like concentration and memory, and it is related to improved mathematics, reading, and writing scores. At Action for Healthy Kids, our signature program is Game On. This program is a free online resource that you can use and tailor to your school's own particular needs. It's a program that helps schools practice good nutrition and physical activity habits with the ultimate goal of getting your school nationally recognized as a health-promoting school. The program is organized into 6 steps to guide your school in creating a sound, sustainable school wellness framework, and you can see those 6 steps here on the screen. You can use Game On by going through each of those 6 steps, or you can just use Game On to focus on ideas, resources, and best practices found in step 4, which uses the blueprint that you see here on the screen. Today's webinar really focuses on best practice strategies related to recess. Action for Healthy Kids' signature Game On program can help you figure out ways to improve the recess and physical activity habits at your school. This 6-step process helps to build a healthy school, but really step 4 is where you can find activities that are related to physical movement. In this diagram, you'll see that our Game On program organizes our activities into rooms. For recess, you're going to want to look on the playground section, so clicking on that room in the school diagram, and it will help you understand different tips and tricks around recess, many of which you'll hear more about today. Make sure that you're not only utilizing Game On, however, to ensure that recess is a part of your work, but also is a part of a comprehensive school physical activity plan and your school's larger school wellness initiatives. Game On is designed to be a one-stop shop for school wellness, and we'll send you the link in the follow-up email. When you think back on your school experience, what stands out most? What was your favorite time of day? I'd venture to guess that one of the top memories of your elementary school career, at least, has to do with recess. Ask any elementary school student today what their favorite part of school is, and I bet that you'll regularly hear recess as the most common response. So because of that, are you looking for ways to improve, refresh, and rejuvenate recess at your school? Well, look no further. Today, we're going to provide you with evidence-based strategies to help enhance your learning environments and the activity at your school. We're going to talk about technical assistance, professional development on recess, indoor recess strategies, why recess is important, and recess policies. So today's school districts across the country are exploring and adapting the whole child, whole school, whole child, whole community model. The WISC model, which it is also called, is ACSD's whole child approach that takes a specific focus on health and wellness. The WISC model highlights the school health components which every school should have to ensure that health, safety, and well-being of their students, staff, and environment are considered. You can see those 10 components outlined in the blue circle on the screen. One of those components, if you can see about 1 o'clock there, is physical education and physical activity. Our topic for today's webinar, recess, is a part of this component around physical activity in the whole school, whole child, whole community model. But this is also more commonly referred to as comprehensive school physical activity. So let's understand how recess fits into the bigger picture. Physical activity is defined as anything that gets your body moving. It can be walking, biking, sports, dance, cleaning the house, walking your dog, any of those things. Most commonly, when people think about physical activity at schools, they think about physical education classes. But schools really provide physical activity time in a large number of ways. Recess, at fitness breaks throughout the school day, classroom learning opportunities that incorporate physical activity through before and after school programming, field trips that are focused on physical activity, and maybe even through establishing a walk and bike to school program. All of these programs can be added up to make your school's comprehensive school physical activity plan. Recess has been highlighted as an important part of an active school environment. It's defined as a period of time when students are encouraged to be physically active and engage with their peers in activities of their choice at any grade level. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a moment. So we have to make sure that schools not only have one component of comprehensive school physical activity in place, but all of them. So a comprehensive school physical activity program includes these 5 components that you see here: a high quality physical education, physical activity during school, physical activity before and after school, staff involvement, and family and community involvement. And recess falls under number 2, physical activity during school. So like I just said, recess is defined as physical activity breaks that allow students to get moving and also take a break from academics during the school day. They could be involved in activities of their own choice, or there might be more structured games. Recess is not always called recess at the secondary level, but more often it's just physical activity breaks that provide students with opportunities to get moving and take a break from academic work. Some examples of how to integrate recess at the secondary level include exploratory programs, mid-morning breaks, lunchtime intramural activities, and physical activity clubs. Students who are physically active tend to have better grades, school attendance, classroom behavior, and cognitive performance. Recess specifically benefits students by increasing their level of physical activity, improving their memory, attention, and concentration, helping them stay on task in the classroom, reducing disruptive behavior, and improving their social and emotional development. These benefits are particularly important for students with special need, functional limitations, or physical disabilities because they may have more behavioral issues and a limited experience interacting socially with others. Recess, if done properly, can also reduce bullying and exclusionary behavior among students. The CDC and Shape America recommend at least 20 minutes of daily recess during the school day as part of the recommended 60 minutes of daily physical activity for students and adolescents. Recess can also help students have a positive feeling of connectedness with their schools, which can affect every aspect of the school, including attendance, engagement, and academic achievement. If you feel recess is threatened in your community, your school doesn't provide 20 minutes of daily recess, or you want to educate your schools on the importance of continuing to support recess, you can check out the resource that is listed here on the page. It's called Strategies for Recess in Schools, and it's a one-stop shop for why recess is important and strategies to help increase its impact. And we're going to share some of those strategies in just a moment. But let's continue on with why recess. There are physical benefits of recess. We know physical activity is essential for healthy growth and development in children. But did you know right now among our 5 to 8-year-olds, 40% have significant cardiac risk factors like obesity, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and an inactive lifestyle? A burst of high intensity physical activity, such as recess, enhances muscle growth, aerobic endurance, gross motor coordination, and the growth of heart, lungs, and vital organs. Studies have shown that physically active children are more likely to become physically active adults and continue the related health benefits. And it's more than just these long-term outcomes that we're looking for. There's also an immediate need for movement. When children are deprived of vigorous recess activities, the body's heart isn't given the opportunity to pump fresh oxygen into a sluggish brain, which is what we're going to talk about next. So there are lots of cognitive benefits from recess. We know that moderate to vigorous physical activity leads to increased brain growth factors, improved memory and cognition, increased levels of neurotransmitters, and the release of natural hormones which improve attention, focus, mood, and emotion. We know that adults learn better new material after they've had physical activity between learning periods, and that children need a more pronounced break in activity, such as engaging in physical activity between sedentary learning periods. Studies have shown that elementary school children are more attentive to their teachers and schoolwork after they have recess, and that children engage in more physical activity throughout the school day perform better than those who spend more time in instruction. Lastly, on this slide, when playing outdoors, children engage freely in language. Competent language skills enhance students' ability to further develop good reading and writing skills, both of which are a big focus at school. Recess also responds to children's emotional needs. Ask any group of second graders today what they like most about school, and as I already mentioned, the majority will answer recess. We can't ignore the fact that for many children, the opportunity to play with their friends is an important reason for coming to school. Recess can help reduce and lower a child's anxiety, manage stress, be a contributing factor for cultural exchange, be an opportunity for positive solidarity play, and be an opportunity to assess the child's peer interactions. And speaking of peer interactions, recess also responds to the child's social needs. The playground during recess is one of the few places where children can actively confront, interpret, and learn from meaningful social experiences. Recess is the only time during the school day when children can determine and organize the direction of their own activities, and is a period of self-determination which provides children a sense of control and positive self-esteem. They also are developing skills for seeing each other's point of view, a necessary element in leading to the accommodation of others, and it's a great environment to practice social emotional learning. And let's not forget, recess is not an alien word to adults either. We like recess too. Here on the screen, you can see some examples of different recesses that adults take. So what can you do to make sure that recess is the best it can be at your school? You can advocate for more recess. Up to 40% of school districts across the country are reducing or eliminating recess. As I mentioned earlier, the recommendation is 20 minutes of recess every day. And the research that I just read is the reason why we want schools to have recess and not eliminate it. So be an advocate in your community to make sure that recess is here to stay. When you scale back recess, it comes at a cost to learning because it's an essential part of the school experience. And it contributes to normal growth and development practices, social skills, positive engagement in classroom activity, and really enhances cognitive performance. So we want to make sure those messages are shared across the education environment. Advocate to improve recess. There are 5 strategies that are in this document here on the screen that is referenced that can be used to advocate for why you need recess and how to improve it. And I'm going to go over those now. So these strategies, there's a lot of them. There's 19. They come from the CDC and Shape America. But I really want to make sure that we're touching on kind of the most important and the first step items for you. So as part of your local school wellness policy requirements, which is a requirement for every school district in the country, make sure that you identify and document recess and recess policies in your plan. On the screen, you'll see some ideas of how to do that. Make sure that your recess policy includes the required number of minutes for recess daily, a recommendation to schedule recess before lunch, a policy for what to do on bad weather days and how you have to, when you have to do indoor recess, staff role modeling on how you want them to engage in recess, and language around not withholding recess as a punishment or as a disciplinary or academic reason. You can also encourage that recess is used as a non-food reward as you're determining your classroom fundraising and classroom party policies. Additionally, on this first recommendation about making leadership decisions around recess, you have to ensure that all staff are trained and adhere to recess policy requirements. It's great to have a strong policy, but if you just have that, it's not enough. Make sure that recess requirements are being held accountable by parents, students, and others in the school and broader community. Develop a written recess plan. These plans should identify who will make decisions about recess, who will be in charge of ensuring that the recess policy is being implemented, and any recess programs that you might host in your district. It can address how recess is organized, how school staff will participate in recess, what will be done on bad weather days, and has the potential to create a recess that really allows students to play at school and create a balance in the school day. Keep in mind, each school is unique, and a prescribed plan for recess will not work for all schools. Each school should think through their written recess plan and determine how to make a plan that supports the school's primary goals and their learning environment needs. You also can use this document from the CDC, I'm sorry that picture is not great, on recess planning in schools. This is a guide to answer the questions that you are considering on how to choose the best recess strategies to implement and evaluate. Tackle this super easy to use template with your school health team to discuss and determine which recess strategies you'll choose, how to implement them, what resources you'll need to help, so you can develop accountabilities for implementation and really think through the basics on recess behavior management, weather plans, training, safety standards, equipment needs, planned activities, and much more. The next 2 strategies around recess implementation are to communicate and enforce behavioral and safety expectations and create an environment supportive of physical activity during recess. So let's start with the first one around behavioral and safety expectations. Schools can support their social emotional learning curriculum and support positive behaviors by teaching and reinforcing rules, protocols, expectations, and behaviors around recess, as well as consequences for not following them. In addition, the conflict resolution strategies and social skills that students are learning in the classroom can be reinforced in the recess environment. Schools should also routinely check recess spaces and facilities to confirm their environment is safe. It is recommended that schools use a safety and equipment guideline checklist regularly to ensure specific types of equipment meet standards, and that schools post rules and safety expectations on or around play areas and structures to ensure proper usage. To create an environment supportive of physical activity at recess, make sure that you're following some basic tips. Provide a variety of equipment, including the appropriate equipment for special needs students. Paint surfaces with lines or games that spark creativity and encourage student-designed games. Create zones that divide physical activity spaces into specific areas for different types of activities. And if needed, try to utilize activity cards that can help show different activity options for students that are struggling on ideas on how to get moving during recess. And then the final two strategies are make sure you engage the school community to support recess and gather information on your recess. So engaging the school community to support recess is very important. Staff have two roles to play during recess, and I know Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools are going to talk about this a little bit more. They're there to not only ensure the safety and that students are following rules and protocols and expectations, but also, this is often forgotten about, by the way, the second role that they should play is to be involved and active with students during recess, to facilitate and role model physical activities. Those staff can play a big role in empowering students to lead activities themselves and encourage other students to join in. One strategy is to use student leaders to set up and lead recess games. If you're looking for people to set up and lead recess games, you can also turn to your parent and broader community as well. These individuals can be great resources to fundraise, volunteer, and advocate for why recess is important for students in your building. And then make sure you're gathering data on recess, just like you gather data on everything else in your school. Track how much physical activity is happening at recess, and collect information on recess that shows the effect on student and school outcomes. So make sure that you're not only advocating to have recess, but you're following some of those best practices on a better recess. You have to ensure that there's enough trained adults, enough space, facilities, equipment, and supplies to ensure that recess is fun and safe. You also have to make sure there's a physically safe environment. Ensure that spaces and facilities meet or exceed recommended safety standards. And you have to make sure that, going back to that policy, that you're not prohibiting students to participate in recess by replacing recess with PE or excluding students from recess for disciplinary or academic or punishment reasons, to ensure that students are taught with consistency the importance of physical activity. So districts across the country have been focusing on recess over the last couple of years. There have been some districts, as I mentioned earlier, that have eliminated recess and others that have prioritized it. So our friends at the Dallas Independent School District in Texas have been working for a couple of years to get recess approved and put into their policy. It was a standard practice in Dallas, but they wanted to make sure that it was sustainable by putting it into their recess policy. So in 2016, at the beginning of the year, the Dallas ISD Board of Trustees approved a policy to make sure that all students from pre-K to 5th grade get a mandatory 30-minute recess per day. They required that recess does not replace physical education class and may not be taken away as punishment. And it's really a model policy for other districts across the country. And there are lots of other successes around recess around the country, but I wanted to share a couple of more as well. There is increasing research on the positive effects of movement, not only on the physical health of our bodies, but also on cognitive development and functioning for people of all ages and abilities. And the difference for students in the availability of safe and accessible places to move and play can be a big one. So at Mount Hermon Exceptional Student Center in Jacksonville, Florida, they were able to turn a play area into a welcoming, safe, and fun space that promotes outdoor exercise and physical activity of all kinds. During the beginning of the school year, a group of school staff and volunteers worked tirelessly to construct a new play area, relocate an existing swing set, install slides and climbing structures, and build a new swing set complete with a wheelchair swing. They also added some fresh landscaping. But this new playground equipment provided a way for all students in this school to be outside and be active and have the opportunity to have recess daily, and also allowed them the opportunity to host a larger Special Olympics celebration. In Westminster, Colorado, one of our parent volunteers, Nicole Coy at Ryan Elementary, worked with her parent team to put together a plan for indoor recess kits on inclement weather days. In Colorado, they receive a lot of snow days. So instead of having students watch movies, which had been the norm in her school, she worked with the PTA partners to make sure that the school had a plan in place to get students much needed movement breaks even when they couldn't go outside. She created recess kits that include jump rope, bowling balls, juggling scarves, that really were able to be moved between classrooms so that every student in the building could get up and get moving even if they couldn't go outside. The great thing about the indoor recess kit is that every child can find an activity from the bag that they enjoy. No one feels left out or pressured to participate in something they don't want to do. So kids are still having fun even if they have to be inside. I'm now going to turn it over to our friends from Charlotte-Mecklenburg, who are going to share with us a little bit about the successes that they had in their district around recess and what they're doing to ensure that every student in Charlotte can get up and get moving through recess. So Andy and Keith, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Andrew Romberger, and I'm a health and PE resource for Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools.
And I'm Keith Kramer, and I'm the PE resource for Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools. And next, what we're going to talk about is the what, the why, and the how of a recess redone. So if you can go to the next slide, Hannah, or next one, even after that. So what is recess redone? Well, it starts with a grant opportunity, and if you go to the next slide, it's a grant opportunity that was started as Achieve 225, trying to get our schools to do 45 minutes of physical activity every day. Now, they can get this activity whether it's through physical education class, recess, and movement opportunities in the classroom throughout the day, whether it's through brain breaks or content-based movement, anything like that where the teacher can get in the extra time to move. Next. The North Carolina Healthy Active Child policy that we have to abide by states that we must have a minimum of 30 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity shall be provided by schools for all K students daily. That recess or this time shall not be taken away from students as a form of punishment. In addition, severe and or inappropriate exercise may not be used as a form of punishment for students. And at least 30 minutes of moderate to vigorous intensity level for duration sufficient to provide a significant health benefit to students. Next. So with that in mind, we were awarded a PEP grant in 2013. And that PEP grant gave us $1.8 million over a 3-year period. And the model was to work on recess in our schools. We chose 30 elementary schools out of 108 that we currently have. 21 of those 30 schools were Title I schools. Over 21,000 students were affected by this grant. The smallest school had 400 students, with our largest school at just over 1,200 students. And there were about 1,500 plus teachers affected through this PEP grant. Next. The goal was to implement and sustain a quality recess program over this time that we can model, discuss, and implement in the non-grant schools once the grant was over. So it did take 3 years for us to kind of figure that out. Why did we want to focus our grant on this recess program? Well, the next slide will show you that 33.5% of the students in our district are overweight or obese, to the effect that kids who did not, during this grant, that did not meet all 6 points of the fitnessgram test showed significant differences in their learning versus the kids who were very active and passed all 6. One of the biggest questions we had to ask our statements to our groups was, we must have the right why to endure the how of a quality recess program. In this next slide, what you'll see is something that's very common in a lot of our schools and your schools. And as a former PE teacher, this happened quite often at our schools, where teachers are sitting in an area and the kids are off playing. And you know, and we know that when this behavior happens, we have a rise in discipline issues and a rise in injuries. And the object of Achieve 225 with our program is to kind of get teachers facilitating games throughout the playground, like the next slide. And this next slide, this is the school that we have 1,200 students, where there's 200 kids out at recess at a given time. And this is how we have put a model into place where there's several opportunity games for these kids to play. And you can't see them, but there's teachers spread out along the playground where everybody is engaged. And now Andrew is going to talk to you a little bit about the how.
Yeah, so how I was able to get started with this, back in 2016, I became the project manager for our PEP grant. And before this, I was actually one of the teachers at one of the schools that was involved with the grant. So I got to see it from both sides, as a teacher helping to implement it in the school, and on the other side of how to help get it into schools and really ensure that quality recess was taking place. So as far as the buy-in, which is the next slide, please, Anna, thank you. You know, we had to make sure that we had the right buy-in so that we can ensure, again, that we were going to get the right things out of this program. So we were able to purchase equipment for all the 30 grant schools, offer stipends to some of the teacher leaders that we'll talk about in a few moments, and we offer training and support in a number of different ways. Okay, so we first, you can get the next slide, Hannah. We started by creating recess teams. Okay, we felt that this was probably the most important piece here, because if we did not have the right people in place to help implement and run our programs, then it wouldn't succeed or wouldn't be sustainable going forward. So we had one teacher per grade level as part of our program, be part of this as our point of contact person and someone that we can go to discuss and talk about different recess topics. As part of this, they were the person who helped collect pedometer step data for us as part of the grant requirement, and we had over 210 plus teachers as part of this. They also collected food and nutrition surveys for us, and they were also the team leader to help facilitate the activities on the playground or on bus lots or their field spaces by having teachers monitor various play zones that were offered to students, and they were all choice areas, which we'll get into in just a few moments. Okay, next, Hannah. Good. All right, so from this, we had to offer training and support. So with our training, we had a number of different things that we worked through, and had a number of great resources that helped us to ensure that quality recess was taking place. And the first one was, we had Playworks come in, and they offered a 5-day training to our teachers and our PAL trainers, which some of our schools had, to help teach games and facilitate recess, and also help us to create and design different play zones. We also were able to work with Dr. Kurt Hinson, also known as Dr. Recess, who offered a staff and student training where he would set up a K2 and 3-5 assembly for students and show them a number of small-sided inclusion-based activities and then from there would go out to recess that day and set up those games on the playground for students to interact with and play with. So from that, he then was able to do a staff training which focused on giving students choices and creating engaging learning environments. All right, and followed by our own trainings here in the district through CMS, we focused on best practices through the different things that we learned and from our experiences by creating a recess toolkit that we will talk about in just a few moments, where we would then reiterate and teach games and activities as well, and monitor and help teachers monitor and really understand how to manage those play zones and ensure that they were being safe and doing all the things they could to offer these opportunities to our students. Okay, next, Hannah. So from the grant, we had 6 schools that were given recess coaches that would help facilitate and assist to ensure quality recess was taking place. And within these 6 schools, they were some of our low performing schools, ones that really needed that extra push, that extra assistance. And they were there full time as helpers to ensure that teachers were facilitating and students were doing what they needed to do out at recess. And we had a lot of success with this. Unfortunately, we didn't have funds going forward to keep these positions in place, but we will explain to you what we did and some of the community partnerships that helped us going forward. Okay, next slide. So you'll see here some of the trainings that took place. Next one, Hannah, please. And this is another photo of another training. This is a student assembly from Dr. Recess. Okay, next one. And then we were also able to provide equipment, which was another huge piece. We were able to give schools over $10,000 worth of recess equipment. So by offering this and giving them this equipment, they were then able to ensure that all those different play zones and play areas had the appropriate equipment for them to perform the different activities. Because in talking with teachers, that was one of the biggest things. So, well, we don't have stuff for our kids to play with, so that's why they kind of lost interest. We took care of that for them. We also were able to put in these ninja warrior type playgrounds or fit trail playgrounds in 3 of our 30 schools. But we tried to pick schools that were kind of centrally located within those 30 schools, or just kind of within a central area where other schools can have access to this and community areas, so that not just the school would be able to play with these things, but also other people within that community. And we were able to work with the Carolina Panthers, our professional football team here in Charlotte, to help get these set up in our schools. All right, next. Okay, another thing is too, like he said in the beginning, providing those additional movement opportunities was another big piece by providing those brain boosts, those brain breaks. So we even run a program called B3, which stands for Brain, Body, and Behavior. And this is a before school movement program to help get kids started on the day, especially for those kids that are falling behind or not up to certain reading levels, or they're falling behind in math, or it could just be a behavior type issue, to get them started on the right foot and get them engaged and get their brains fired up and ready to learn. We also do classroom fitness exercises, kinesthetic learning opportunities, and you can see in the top left corner, working with Mecklenburg County Parks and Rec. And with working with our local Park and Rec community, we were able to now have them help us post-grant be those recess coaches for us and be those facilitators. So in 6 of our schools right now, we have recess facilitators from Park and Rec who work 3 days a week in those schools, helping facilitate, run the different activities, different choice play zones that my colleague Kramer and I have put them through different trainings to help them get started. But then they're also able to talk about the different programs that they offer, a lot of them which are free, to get students more active, and their parents and anyone else in that community more active, to understand the value of movement and its impact on learning and overall health.
So from this, lessons learned. As a good teacher knows, anytime you write a lesson plan, your first one's kind of the draft, and you work your way up into a great lesson plan. Well, that's the same thing with this recess thing. In order for us to get buy-in, we had to help administrators and teachers understand the why this is important to the school day, so that then we can show them the how. There has to be effective communication between whether it's us or even the recess teams at the school and the kids and administration, so that everybody's on the same page. We would like to, and that we want to design this recess team as part of their school health team so that they can follow the Healthy Active Children policy, which many of our schools were not, and they were just kind of signing off on as doing. Next. So one of the lessons learned was that when you give kids choices, all right, that was a better model, giving them a chance to move around the playground and have a variety of games. We also had our teams talk about conflict resolution. A lot of that came from the PE teacher in gym class, going through whether it was a rock, paper, scissors for arguments, or allowing kids to come up with some idea to solve or redirect any kind of issues in the game. Now, for the rest of our schools that aren't in the grant, is trying to find a way to provide equipment through grant funds or PTO. And we have several of our teachers who have gone out and used the internet, used Facebook, and have parents donate equipment to the schools. Now, yes, we did give $10,000 worth of equipment to schools, but we also found in those that we don't need that much equipment. We can scale it down and make it a little more affordable for a lot of these schools. We also offer a ton of resources. On our website, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, we have resources for teachers like games. We've offered video opportunities so that teachers can, in a little break before they go outside, show a game on their smart board so the kids can understand it and go outside and play it. Next. We also want to, thank you. We also want to try to talk to schools about designing schedules so that each grade level is outside at their own time. Because with our schools, schedules are all over the place depending on the size of the school, lunch schedules, and a lot of times we have fifth graders outside with second graders or first graders, and that's just not a good environment for some of our kids. So we try to stress the importance of a grade level outside at a time. Teacher facilitation is huge. Having teachers start games, play games, or just go watch an area, because when they do group up, that's when we found that there were more problems in the schools that were have them moving around and pushing them around to different play areas. A whole lot bigger drop in discipline and injuries. And again, inclusion-based games, adding play zones with small-sided activities where we have a few kids playing and not 20-on-20 kickball where you kick, you sit, you pitch, and then you might not play or touch a ball the whole game. Trying to do games that kind of boost their self-esteem, get more participation. It's just so much better for our kids when you give them multiple play areas and opportunities.
All right, next, Hannah. So as you'll see, too, the recess toolkit that we designed was over a period of 3 years, like Kramer or Keith was saying earlier. And this allowed us to then create something that ensured that the best practice for what a quality recess program would look like. So when we created this toolkit, we did it as a collaborative effort among the G225 recess school teams. So over 210 teachers, again, and administrators collected student data, they completed the surveys and participated in our focus group sessions to provide us the feedback on how to implement what this toolkit would look like. So if you go to our website, which we'll talk about later, you can have access to this toolkit, and you can even have it as part of this, this URL shortener here that shows you the different things that we do with our schools and the little checklists and guidelines to help guide them on their discussions on what their recesses are going to look like in their building. And we know that it's going to look a little bit different. This is just a guide depending on space, the number of students, the amount of time, all those factors we know contribute to what their recess is going to look like. Okay, next one, Hannah. So again, our recess redone, the choice-led approach through this toolkit gives the teachers that guideline and those checklists to check and to ensure that recess is taking place, a quality program. And then it also gives you the roles and responsibilities of each person or each person in that party, such as the administrator, the classroom teachers, and the PE teacher. So what's everyone's role and job in this? And it's just a little yes, no checkbox to see if they're doing these things. If you have a recess specialist specialists like some of our schools had, or the Parks and Rec persons, there's a little evaluation form for them to kind of reflect on the different things they're doing to see if it's working or if it's not working, and things they can do to help make it better. And then one part that we really like too is the physical literacy piece that we're all tasked to do as physical education teachers, you know, to make sure we get that physical literacy in by offering a K2 and 3-5 writing prompts. You know, if we ask our students once in a while or bi-weekly, just from time to time, ask them the different things that they like to do at recess or how their recess went, and they have to write about it or draw a picture, then they're responsible for what they're playing. And when they don't know it's coming, then that's always going to be in the back of their head that might be the day that I might have to write about what I'm doing. And it's also showing that evidence for parent-teacher conferences, where you can kind of see trends that are going on to then fix things that are going on in the playground, and we can solve them pretty quickly. Okay, next. So again, Mecklenburg County Park and Rec going forward, they are helping us in 6 of our schools right now, and we're hoping to expand on that next year. Again, funding is a big part of that, so hopefully showing the effectiveness of having them in our schools will then show the community and different leaders that, hey, this is an effective program, we need to add more. So we will keep you up to date on how that's going forward. Next one, Hannah. And here are some pictures of some of our persons at those schools right now that are working with those students. Next. Again, here's some more, there's follow-up pictures, okay, to help ensure that these things are taking place. All right, so to wrap this up, before we answer any questions, here's our contact information if you need to reach out and contact us in any way. Kim Cook at the top, she is our health and PE curriculum specialist, who's not part of this webinar, but she would gladly answer any questions that you may have as well. If you go to our website too, cmshpe.com, and that's cmshpe.com, you can find links to all these different resources, and we would love to have you check our stuff out, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
And give us any feedback, and we can collaborate and work together on all of this. So, any questions?
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Just a reminder to everyone that I am going to be sharing the link to the CMS website that you see on the screen here into their recess toolkit in the follow-up email. So don't feel like you need to write that down. I'll also put Andy and Keith's email address on there so that you can connect with them if you have questions, and they're a great resource, and we'd be happy to hear from you, as they were saying. So Christina, do we have any questions for Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools?
Yeah, we did have a few come through. The first one was about your relationship and partnership with Parks and Rec. Can you talk a little bit about how you developed that and strengthened that over the years to get it where it is now?
So when the grant first started, Andrew and I were not part of the original grant writers, and I actually came in year 2 of the grant. And it was during that time that we were introduced to the directors of Parks and Rec, who wanted to get involved in the schools because they wanted to add, see what they can do in the schools to help build up some of their programs, because they have some of the best programs in Charlotte-Mecklenburg County, and they offer it at such a low cost that a lot of our kids can get involved. So the partnership started with them seeing what they can do to get involved. And it took a while to figure out the logistics of it as to whether or not they were going to come in as playground facilitators and how that would work for them, because we weren't going to be giving them any funding. We didn't have funding for it. And they were going to offer us up what they could free. And after year 3, when we found a model that worked with playground facilitators and what they can give us, we took advantage and said, okay, this is what we want to do. We'll put the people that you want to put in our schools, train them in the model that we have going on. We took them on school visits to kind of show them what a playground would look like. And we also wanted to find out, how can we promote their programs in our schools so that, some of the schools are close to their facilities. Some of our kids go to after-school programs at their facilities, but how do we reach the kids that aren't close to them? How can we get them the knowledge of, Parks and Rec programs? And we put some in schools that were a little further away to try and build that up there. and that's where we are now. I mean, we started with putting people, 20 of their people in schools once a week, but it was tough to stay up with that because if they were rained out from that specific day, they didn't come back to the following week, because these were facilitators that were coming from running a morning program. They were leaving the morning program, coming to the school, and then going back to their afternoon program.
Yeah, because, and one of the other things too is when they approached us on how they can help us, they were finding that during the middle of the day when the kids were in school, they didn't really have much for those workers to do. So they're like, well, if we can get them more involved in the schools, that would help us at the same time, even though they're still paying them and they're on the clock for Park and Rec. But they wanted them to be more involved, again, like Kramer said, to promote and get more of their programs going, because they offered a lot of not only free things, but also things at low cost, which, you know, a lot of our kids were struggling with because so many of our travel programs have taken over in this area where they couldn't afford to get involved in sports in the community. But with this program, you know, the 20 schools that were involved, yeah, it was a little bit tough at first because, again, just getting them there consistently was a problem. So that's why we scaled it back to 6, where they are then closer to where their sites are, or a lot of our schools have Park and Rec sites already on campus. So we tried to focus on those areas where they could have more access and more people involved. And that's where I think we're going to see the biggest growth going forward. And then once we see that growth and the effectiveness, then it's only a matter of time where they're going to get more funding and figure out a way to expand this to other schools.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Christine, do we have another question?
Yeah, I just have one other question that came in, and this one is about principal pushback. And the question is, you shared a bit about designing schedules to ensure recess is maximized. Did you get any principal pushback from reorganizing schedules? And if you did, how did you work with principals to move forward?
Well, that's a really good question. So we can only encourage. We can't, ask them. We can't forcibly make their schedules. The principals who have bought into the movement part of the school day really worked hard in developing schedules that we thought would work best for them. Then you do have that faction of principal that, they're academics. It's got to be a sit down. We did get some pushback from them and just kind of had to work with what we had there. We gave them the ideas, we showed them the best practices, and we even showed them some of the follow-up, research that we had from the schools that were doing it well. But again, even in some of you're always going to have some of that pushback depending on what the buy-in is from the administration. I mean, it's unfortunate that not everybody believes in the movement, but
what we can say is that over the past, 2 years or so, we've definitely had more administrators buy in as far as understanding the value of movement, where before they didn't understand their why. So by understanding that why piece, by us going out and presenting, doing professional developments in their schools, in the community, and in different ways to show them the value of movement, we've gotten more of the buy-in. It's expanding and it's growing in a positive way. So we are starting to change the mindset of a lot of those principals that really didn't value it. So they weren't really concerned about, I got to ensure that kindergarten has their own time slot for 30 minutes, first grade, second grade. But now they're starting to talk to one another. And that's what this has brought about. Like, what's making your school run so effectively? And once they start talking to each other, it turns into a competition and they want to try to outdo the other one. So we've created that healthy competition within schools, and we are getting more of that buy-in, and they are starting to do more structured scheduling and purposeful scheduling around recess time.
But we're also using social media pretty hard. So Kim Cook, who's our specialist, she runs our CMS HPE Twitter and Facebook accounts, and she's throwing articles all over the place about why movement, and a lot of these principals and schools are connected to those accounts because they're trying to get us all connected on social media. And because of that pushback, people are saying, oh, what can you help us with?
And then finally, like when we designed this grant and met with the 30 schools, obviously administrators had to sign off to be part of this program. And so when we sat down and were able to go back, I know we weren't the original grant, grant team that picked the schools, but going forward, when we met with schools and met with principals, we were then able to discuss what things are working, what things are not working, and from there, really focus on these different areas that we created in the toolkit to then say, are these things taking place? How about trying this? You know, and from that, a lot of them did listen to what we had to say, and it did make a big change, especially with scheduling. So we got most of our 30 schools to buy into that scheduling piece, and then going forward, now when we introduce it to non-grant schools, you know, they're asking us what things do they need to do. That's one of the things we really focus on, is giving them their own separate times.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us and sharing your successes. I do want to make sure that I say that we know that the PEP grant is no longer out there, and that a lot of you have not had the benefits of the funding that Charlotte-Mecklenburg have had, but their resources and their recess toolkit are a excellent place for people to start that haven't had that funding and can kind of learn from and benefit from their best practices. So like I said, I'll include the link to that in the follow-up email. Make sure you check it out. It's got so many excellent ideas and successes that you can implement in your community. I think another big takeaway from their presentation is for sustainability, it's really important to link with other community efforts and find potential partners for your school to help with programming and funding, like they were able to do with their Parks and Recreation department. So before we end today, I just want to remind everyone that recess is a really important part of your overall school wellness identity. So as I mentioned earlier, the goal of our Game On program at Action for Healthy Kids is to get schools nationally recognized and to help cement your school as a leader in health and wellness across the tool. Across your school. Any positive recognition that your school receives is likely to leave your school community wanting more and can only help boost your health and wellness initiatives. So one of these programs is called the Healthier U.S. Schools Challenge, and it's an initiative that recognizes schools that have created healthier school environments through the promotion of nutrition and physical activity. You apply into this initiative, and when you're awarded, you receive some funding that ranges from $500 to $2,000, depending on which level you are able to apply for. And by the way, that funding can be used, again, to support recess initiatives in your school. So Action for Healthy Kids has staff all over the country who can help you complete this application. So please reach out to us if you're interested, or look at step 6 of our Game On program to see what resources we've created to get you recognized for the hard work that you're doing. This is my contact information. If you have additional questions, we're going to wrap it up for today since we're right at the top of the hour. So I want to thank everyone for participating in our Recess Why It Should Rock webinar. As I mentioned earlier, a follow-up email with the recording and resources mentioned throughout the webinar will be sent out tomorrow, including the contact information for myself, Keith, and Andrew at the Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, who have so graciously offered to share their resources and their expertise with any of you that are interested. So in the meantime, please stay up to date on success stories, health tips, physical activity games, volunteer opportunities, recess tips and tricks, and more by following Action for Healthy Kids on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Flickr, YouTube, or any of the other ways that use social media. And we wish you a great rest of your week. Hope that you get some recess time in yourself. And thank you for joining us today. Have a good one.